be that guy. I'm going to do the vanilla JS talk. So my name is Brian. I'm a webmaster at begin.com. I choose to call myself a webmaster. I've been a web developer for a very long time, and I want to bring this back. You know, why can't we still be webmasters? That was so fucking cool. Okay, I've done some dumb things. I've done some okay things. In 2007, I think, I created WTFJS.com. Don't go there right now because the cert expired, and I'm busy, man. I don't know. But that was over 11 years ago, which is funny because it's still pretty fucked up. And then in 2008, I started working on a project called PhoneGap. And then in 2010, Steve Jobs wrote this letter about how Flash, that's it. And Kevin Lynch called us the next day, and Adobe PhoneGap, which I didn't really like. So we created Apache Cordova. And I don't really do any of that anymore. For about 2 years now, I've been working on a serverless thing. But I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about how the hardest thing in web development is to center things. I tried to embed this, and I swear to God, I have been doing this stuff since like 1996, and I could not center that. But it's in there. I was being a smartass on Twitter, and Ben called me out. He's like, "You gonna back that up?" And I'm like, "I maybe. I think I can." So vanilla JavaScript. I will not press play. It's in the slides, and these are going to be online in a minute, so you can try them out for yourself and listen to that song. Vanilla JavaScript's a bit of a gaffe. It's kind of doesn't make sense. You can't not write JavaScript, right? Like it's sort of a negative thing. It's kind of an insult. It's like trying to make fun of frameworks. It's just JavaScript. And people have been saying this for actually quite a while. And there's a version of this talk I could give right now that's got a whole bunch of bad feels. I could be that guy. I could be the guy who's like, you know, your bundles are too fucking big. But I don't work at Google, so it's okay. Mobile devices do have limited resources. As a former PhoneGap developer, I can attest to this in a big way. But I'm not really interested in that talk, because that talk is lame and cranky. And I'm not. So there's a good feels version of this talk, which is the talk I'm going to give you, and the talk I think you need to hear. So Lori points this out, but we're doing pretty good right now. Like, we have a huge amount of reuse that we have never enjoyed in software development before. The unimaginable reuse that we have today is a huge multiplier, and it has changed absolutely everything. You are far more productive than the developers of 10 years ago by such a measure. And there's this huge explosion going on of new tools, languages, techniques, and ideas. And I wouldn't even begin to try and denigrate any of that. I think this is the most exciting time to be a web developer ever. And we're doing good here. We're not doing bad here. And this is something to be really excited about. Amazon's got this really weird, interesting philosophy called primitives over frameworks. And the web kind of did too for a little bit with this idea of the extensible web manifesto. And I really like this thinking. I like the idea of decomposing my application down to its smallest little components and then being able to recompose those pieces like little Legos, because I'm a child. I'm just kidding. I'm not. So in order for me to think about primitives versus frameworks, I'm going to have to talk about JavaScript modules. And, you know, I'm getting really tired of talking about them, but I'm going to talk about them anyway. So in the earliest days, like I'm talking the 90s, man, which maybe some of you were born in. You couldn't do anything. Like, it didn't matter. It was free for all. You could just include stuff hanging off the window. The window was a global, and you could do whatever you wanted. Anyone could do anything they wanted to you. They could modify the prototype and change the entire chain of execution, and you'd have absolutely no idea. It was total. It was anarchy. And there's only one solution for anarchy. Batman. Yeah. Vigilante motherfucking justice. That's the solution to anarchy. That's how you fix anarchy. So just ask an anarchist. So AMD was an early form of vigilante justice in the module systems of JavaScript. It standard for asynchronous module design. I actually don't know what it stands for. That's funny. And so you're just defining this function, and this define function that you're calling is registering it. There's really one player in this world, and his name is James Burke, but he goes by Require.js. And the website is actually really up to date, super well maintained, has a huge history. The ecosystem is massive. Turns out there's a lot of JavaScript out there. And it's worth checking out, and I link it here. So when this is published, you can check it out yourself. The AMD world was sort of met with some opposition because asynchronous code is sometimes considered hard to follow. So in 2009, before Node.js, I want to point out, there was a Batman-like figure in our community, Isaac Sluter. No, he wasn't really like Batman. But him and Kevin Dangor and many others worked on this concept of CommonJS, which was a synchronous module design, which eventually became something that Node did. Neither was really better than the other. They were just things that were happening. And then just all of a sudden, like out of nowhere, V8 ships with Chrome, and the Chrome browser is a shock. This is a brand new execution model. It's a brand new way of looking at JavaScript. We had been mired in years of thinking JavaScript was a second-class citizen to performance, and there was no way that it could be fast because it was interpreted or something. And V8 happens and just trashes that concept completely. At that time, the biggest server-side JavaScript framework was a thing called Narwhal, which was based on Rhino, which was an old JVM-based version of JavaScript. And because it was based on the JVM, the startup time was horrible and it was really slow. So that changed, and that changed the game, because browsers are a really big platform, and a lot of people access stuff through browsers. And so the fastest browser tends to be the one that everybody wants to use. And that competitive advantage didn't go unnoticed. Ryan Dahl saw it and implemented an early version of Node.js, which had no module system. In the beginning days, there were dozens of module systems. And that changed really fast, too. CoffeeScript happens. Anybody here writing CoffeeScript? Just admit it. You work at GitHub. Come on. Where are you? Where are you? It's fine. It's great, actually. The transpiler was born. Jeremy Ashkenas shared the stage with Brendan Ike, and TC39 was re-energized. This changed the fucking game. We had a way to experiment with syntax before shipping it in a browser behind a flag, and that's a really big deal because at this point the web had been moving at a turtle's pace. We suddenly had a way to test stuff really, really quick. And everybody noticed that, so there was CoffeeScript, CoffeeScript 2, Wrath of Khan. That's real. That happened. I'm not even kidding you. That actually happened. Cocoa, LiveScript, Ice CoffeeScript, UberScript, ToffeeScript, really? Like Caffeine, Dart? Any fans of Dart? Come on, Flutter's cool. Okay, there's 2 people that like Dart. TypeScript. Laura already did this. A lot of TypeScript fans. People love TypeScript. Elm? Yeah. PureScript? Yes, right? Flow? Not super enthusiastic for Flow. Objective-J. Array syntax for calling methods. Come on. JSX? Yeah, right? ClojureScript? It's amazing. Pumpkin spice cafe latte script? Okay, I made that up. I made it up. I made it up. All right. I'm going to be serious. I'm going to be serious for just 1 second. BabelScript. So people say BabelScript derisively. They shouldn't. Babel has been, by far and away, one of the more interesting and consequential projects of our time. We depend on it. It's a Swiss Army knife. The handle's a knife. It's dangerous. It's very sharp. And it can do a lot. And it can cut up your hand just as quick as it can help you. Things I'm not saying is that transpilation is bad. And I want to be so clear about that because I feel like sometimes people think that this is all negative. There are so many positives to transpiling. So the first one, the thing we were looking for originally, the quest of figuring out what's going on, was terseness. CoffeeScript really shed all the weight of JavaScript, all the weird syntax ceremony, all the strange callbacks to Java and like It really showed us how beautiful JavaScript is as a language. It boiled it down to its most essential complexity, and it was nice. The thing I care about was that we got to test browser features before they hit the browser, and so we didn't get locked into these mistakes. You've all seen the stupid joke where it's like Crockford's good parts, and then JavaScript, the definitive guide. And it's like, oh, these are the good parts, and those are the bad parts. And this is just a property of the web. Things don't go away because things can't break, and because of that, we accrue mistakes. And this allows us to not make those mistakes up front. The last thing that I think a lot of people are excited about today is static analysis, and this gives us code mods and tools and editors and varying module systems and semantics, and that's cool too. The thing I am trying to say is that by choosing to transpile, you are opting into breaking changes. And I don't think this is news to anybody in this room. I have a couple tabs open, and I'm not doing this to make anybody feel bad. I just want you to, not my email, not that. There it is, breaking changes. Okay, so this is the breaking changes for TypeScript since inception, so that's not bad. These are the breaking changes of Babel this week. No, I'm just kidding. It's not even funny, Brian. These are just, this is the trade-off. This is the deal we made, right? Like, we're not going to build for the web. We're going to transpile. This is the deal that we're making. And words are really, really important, especially in today's climate. There are other words for trade-offs. Constraints. I like constraints. Constraints are nice. Design moves faster with constraints. Limitations. Ooh, negative connotation, but let's just go with that. Limitations. So what are some of the limitations of transpiling? Well, your performance can be impacted. And I use that carefully because I know this isn't an absolute, not a Sith. This isn't like a only bad thing. Sometimes including some plugins can add some bloat. Some things can compile away stuff. So I don't know if this is like a full-on limitation, but it's something you have to consider. Line numbers is a pretty big deal, man. I'm not the smartest software developer in the world, but I'm pretty sure almost every bug I resolved came from understanding where the error happened. And when I get an error and it doesn't give me a line number, time to bug resolution goes up. That's it. Like that's a fact. This is my cat. And notice I'm terrible at centering things on the internet. And this is such a great metaphor for debugging transpiled code. This is at my in-laws' house, and this bird doesn't even look like a bird up close. But every time we bring the cat over to the in-laws' house, he's always trying to look at this thing and figure out how to get behind it. And that's exactly how I feel with an error when I'm dealing with transpiled code. That all doesn't really matter. You can choose to opt into those things, and that's not a big deal. A big deal is it's Friday night, and there was a security vulnerability and a downstream dependency of yours, and you have to upgrade. And oh, by the way, there's some breaking changes. This is work you didn't plan to do. And that usually results into, I wouldn't normally ask you to do this, but do you think you can come in this weekend and look at That's what happens, man, and this is work you didn't plan for because discovery is a thing, and ecosystem thrash is real. This leads me down some Rich Hickey-style thinking about what changes. Some people correctly identified that there really isn't such thing as change so much as there's adding things, and then there's breaking things. And breaking things is a lot less cool than adding things. Adding things is great. And removing things feels really good right up until that happens. And you have no idea where it came from. And you got opted into it by an upstream dependency of yours. And that's the difference between two types of changes. I think our tools are a lot better at this now. We don't have to worry about this as much as we used to. Especially if we're using some of the better static analysis tools, we can probably know up front. Probably know is nice. Absolutely know is really nice. So Here's the thing about the web. Web doesn't break. Web browsers do not break themselves. And they don't do it because they're nice guys. Don't think that for a second. They're doing it because it's self-interest. And they're doing it because they don't want to lose adoption. And sometimes they'll change things, but they'll only do it in an additive way. In a fit of extreme irony, Steve Jobs wrote that letter in 2010 about Flash not being open. I read it on an iPhone today that won't be able to run any apps from iOS between the years of 2008 and 2017. So it's pretty funny that he would say this, but it's true. It's true. This is a little bit of a side thing, but I think it's really important to this community to recognize this one. Lori hinted at this. I'm going to be really direct about it. Specifications are not standards. There's a lot of specifications out there that people are not following. There are many specifications out there that have no implementation whatsoever. So just because somebody said something doesn't make it true. And some standards don't have a spec. CommonJS is abso-mother-fucking-lutely a standard. There are a billion modules. This is a de facto standard. And if that makes you uncomfortable, consider that I would also say JSX is now a de facto standard at this point. And we have to think about things in this way. Just because someone wrote it down doesn't make it true. Regardless of either of these assertions about the bureaucrats that don't matter, browser implementations are extremely stable runtimes, and you can utilize that to your personal advantage. And that's kind of the point I'm trying to make. So if you opt out of breaking changes, there can be benefits to you individually as a human being and to your company that you work for. So speed's one of those advantages. And speed's not to be messed with. Your author time is going to be faster. As you're writing stuff, that's it. You wrote it. There's no more artifacts to create. There's nothing else left to do. There's nothing left else to analyze. Runtime can be smaller due to less dependencies. I don't know if this is absolutely true as much anymore. Our state-of-the-art around compilers is getting pretty good. Bug resolution can be easier. But if I'm saying reading, writing, running, and fixing your code can be faster, I guess what I'm really trying to say is maybe that's worth exploring, right? Maybe it's worth checking out. So how do we go about writing JavaScript? One of the first things that we want to do to write JavaScript would be to target evergreen browsers. I know that this is not a luxury everyone gets to enjoy. I've worked in a big co, and I get it. But if you do, if you got the chance, if you got a fresh start, go for that evergreen browser, and you're going to be able to use two of the probably most important primitives that we draw dependencies for, and that's modules and networking. Components would be nice. They would be really nice. We've been waiting for a while. They're not there yet. They're not in Edge, and they're not in IE11. So that's excluding a very large group of people. For all of the advocacy I see for web components, I don't hear great answers for that. I hear polyfills, and I hear a lot of hand waving. And if you really did care about the next billion users, then this shit would have shipped already. So how do we do this? How do we ship a JavaScript module? Script tags back, baby. We can do this. We can do this. This is allowed. Type module is super allowed. Now, there's sort of two ways to go about thinking about this, but once I include a proper, naked, no transpile, just JavaScript module, I can do this with an entry file that it itself includes a bunch of stuff, or I can include all that stuff in that index file. Now, the reason that I want to do this up front with an entry file is because HTTP2 will download all that stuff instantly in parallel for me. If I don't, every module that includes another module that includes another module becomes a waterfall of failure leading to your user going to your competitors. Because every module has to wait for the other module to download before it actually executes it. And that resolution algorithm it's a problem. So you have to know your dependency graph before you go do this. But if you do this, this will all download in parallel. And so it can be super fast. So here's a here's a vanilla JavaScript module. This is not something I just made up. This is something I extracted out of begin.com that we built. And yeah, I'm not super proud of it. This was like, the first pass, the first bad pass. Like, let's have that little button in the corner that expands and contracts the menu, and we'll replace it later. That's what we told ourselves 8 months ago. And well, it turns out because these things are scoped, they're small, like a few bytes, and it's in one spot. We haven't replaced it yet because it works, and it does all it needs to do. It doesn't do anything else. And that's actually pretty useful and great. Here's another vanilla module. I don't know. So what do we got here? Well, we're pulling in Preact, so the purists are mad. And we're pulling in another module, so we're opting ourselves out of that parallel download by doing this. But maybe if this was already downloaded, it would have just resolved it there, so that's good. And then we're just rendering it. And Preact gives us this hyperscript function, this H function, which lets us opt out of the transpile. This is what the transpile turns it into. It's a function. You pass it the tag name, the attributes for that tag, and then the children for that tag. And that's it. That's all you have to do this. My point here isn't to demonstrate how sloppy my coding is so much as the amount of vanilla is kind of up to you. We hit a wall with just going 100% vanilla with begin.com, and we started to pull in React on a case-by-case basis. And that wasn't quite working out, and so we pulled in Preact, and we're really, really happy with it. And so what I'm trying to say is this is not a binary, mutually exclusive, on-off state. You can do this on a module-by-module, page-by-page basis, and layer up your architecture. Additive change means you can do things incrementally without having to worry about breaking the larger system. And this is a sort of simple concept that gets lost on a lot of devs for a very long time. I want to caution you before you go ahead and do this. The node interop story for ES modules is not great at the moment. There are libraries to help you out. They're quite big. They're very complex. They obfuscate your code. You got to think about those things and the trade-offs that come with it. And there's no IE11, which may opt you out if you're in a bigger enterprise situation. Something else we learned with begin.com, when we went in to do this, we decided, okay, we're going to rewrite how we are approaching things, and we're going to start off totally naked and then only add stuff as we needed it. And as of today, we actually still haven't added bundling, minification, or code splitting. So that's kind of shocking. And we've done it maintaining performance. And so I'm kind of saying maybe try and focus on solving the problems you have and not the ones that you want. And you can be pleasantly surprised by your velocity. But the other thing I'm saying is view source is kind of back. And this is how I learned. So I'm going to, oh no, I'm offline. Oh, let me get online here. It's not that I don't trust you all. Just got to join the virus network here. That's my network. You can join it if you want to. Okay. So this is Begin. Begin's a CI system for Lambda functions, and it's horribly washed out, which is really a shame. I'm going to hop over to dock to the side. Let's see, we're at PWA. Neat. And so Begin, you create Lambdas, and we deploy them for you. Check out this network graph. That was on my phone. Those are all the modules we just loaded. And let's look at a simple one. You'll notice they're loading between 50 and 150 milliseconds in parallel. So a full page load's taking us a little under 2 seconds. And like we're so sloppy, there's still line endings. We're just building fast, and this just works, like everywhere, without doing anything other than uploading the code. And that's kind of a nice feature, right? This is not how we were doing things for quite a while, and I really feel like we lost something there. When I was learning how to write software in the late 90s, I was going to a lot of raves. And I don't know if I'd be able to learn this now. Honestly, it was a messy time. So mastery of JavaScript is timeless. It's not changing. It's not going to break. So your skills right now are going to be relevant for a very long time to come, at least as long as the web. And that's a very big deal. You can solve a lot of the problems that you're hearing about today with some patience. And that includes component models. You can wait for stuff to be unflagged in the browser until you use it. That's not going to kill you. And you can also choose to be fast by default by looking at approaching your code as an additive, opt-in, slowly incremental process instead of just buying into a big system right up front that's monolithic. And before I bail on this altogether, I want to say that we need to be a little bit more excellent to each other. There's a lot of right and wrong in this community. A lot of people accusatory about like how we approach things. And with a little bit of time, you'll see that that lens is wrong. This is all just JavaScript. You're not a React developer. You're web developers. And you're all colleagues. So, thanks.
Thank you.